Hey guys, let's talk about tonight's episode of The Tomorrow People, and I enjoyed this episode. We had the return of a villain named Julian, and he basically turned himself into Ultra. And his reasoning was that he has nobody. He lost his girl, he's lost his people, and he doesn't really have a foundation anymore. So he's turned himself in so that he can become an agent of Ultra. And ultimately, he is promising Jedekiah that he will return or at least find out where the lair is, where Kara and all of her people are, and he will take care of them and destroy them. So that is his whole mission. And of course, Jedekiah is not just going to let him run off willy nilly. So he implants him with this bomb in his nose. And so there's this imminent threat throughout this whole entire episode that Jedekiah is just going to set off this bomb if things don't go his way. So of course, Julian is frantic and he wants to make sure that this mission is accomplished. So Kara and her crew make a trip to the grocery store to try to find some supplies for the lair, and this is when Julian ambushes them. And of course, Russell, who was beaten within an inch of his life by Julian and his crew, has a very serious vendetta against him and wants to be able to take him out. But again, they do like a bit of a sneak attack and they taser Russell, and of course they put all these suppression handcuffs on them so they can't teleport out of there. And then, of course, ultimately, Kara comes face to face with Julian, and they have a little bit of a fight scene. And then behind Julian, so he doesn't really see it, Steven steps in and helps the situation and knocks like a jar of something off of the shelf, and it smacks Julian in the back of the head, which then drops Kara. So of course the mission is a flop. All the Tomorrow People get out of their suppression cuffs and they are able to teleport out. Now, one of the things that is obviously still continuing in this episode is John is no longer in the lair. He is out and about above ground, and he is staying at Steven's house. And this he was there since last week's episode, and he's still there. And he's so sweet in the morning. He's like cooking breakfast, and he's just doing like a big brother type thing with Steven, and it's kind of cute. But anyways, I bring that up because Charlotte, who was one of the Tomorrow People who they found at that building like a few episodes ago, she misses John, and they've been doing their whole telecommunication thing. And she's been talking with him, and obviously he knows that she misses him, and he lets her know that he misses her too. So she goes and tries to find John at Steven's house. And again, this is how Julian is able to find her. Like, he tracks her. And how does he do it? He does it because, of course, every one of these Tomorrow People, the Ultra is able to track them through some device. So he's now set on trying to find whoever this Tomorrow person is. And of course, Steven is trying to put the kibosh on that. But Julian is kind of on to Steven because he pretty much figures that whatever happened back at the grocery store, Steven was a part of it. So he stabs him with some dart thing, and he gets out of the van, and he ends up kidnapping Charlotte. So now, of course, this is going to bring John back to the Tomorrow People. And Steven because basically Steven tries to telecommunicate with John and says, get out of my house because they're coming for you. He's like, I'm not in your house. And he's with Astrid, which I'll get to after. But he was with Astrid at the time. And so this is with him putting two and two together that Charlotte went to try to find him. So, of course, when Steven comes to, he's with John, and he's telling him, look, you were knocked out. I found this doll. And obviously they have Charlotte. So by the time Steven gets back to the Ultra, he sees that Charlotte's been put in, one of those rooms where they're trying to, read her thoughts. And that is what Julian is doing, because Julian needs to be able to do this in a short period of time so that he can get this bomb out of his nose. And he's able to do it. So he asks Jedekiah for a kill squad, and they head to the lair. Now, of course, Julian is actually a pretty good villain. Like, he does a really good job in this episode, and it's everything that his whole motivation in this episode is like, self-preservation. He's trying to save himself, and he does have a vendetta against Kara, so he does hate her, and he does want to take her out. but ultimately he wants to save himself. So when he goes now to try to find this lair, he takes Stephen with him because he knows that if Stephen's close by, then Jedekiah won't set off the bomb, and that is sort of his leverage. And of course, the plan backfires, and Kara and John and Russell come up with a great plan to trap him in this part in the lair, and ultimately he runs out of time. And it's, it's really sad because at the end of the day, he's half human, he's half, tomorrow person. And it's just, like shocking that they actually blew him up because I didn't think they would. I thought they'd turn the bomb off, but Jedekiah wasn't able to do it because he was too deep underground, and so they couldn't stop it because he wanted to actually, and so the bomb goes off, and Julian is no longer with us. And I thought it was very interesting that Jedekiah genuinely looked upset that he thought Stephen was near him and that Stephen died. So again, Jedekiah, he's just not all one thing. He's not all evil. He has some humanity in him deep, 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 deep down. But yeah, like you could see that he was relieved when Stephen walked in the room, even though Stephen then ripped a strip off of him and was like, you say that you want to do all this to save humanity, but you are barely even human yourself. Like you don't know, like you don't act human. Like, he was going to torture this young little girl and now he's going to send her back to this asylum where they kidnapped her or they rescued her from, episodes ago. So, Jedekiah is definitely a bad guy, but then he just shows these very small glimpses of, the human side to him. So he's just got so many layers, which is good. Okay, so let's talk about the other stuff that went down in this episode. And we had a lot of flashbacks in this episode, and they were all flashbacks regarding Kara and John and when they pretty much first met, and which was on the subway. And she was stealing some guy's wallet, and then she tried to steal John's watch. And he called her out on it, and he was like, listen, you need to be careful. There are other people like us, and we can work together and protect each other. And, she wasn't having any of it. And here's one of my problems with Kara. How did he fall in love with this girl? Because she is never nice. So she ends up headbutting him and calling him out saying, don't try to, try to pick up don't try to pick up another tomorrow person, when they're alone on the subway, blah, 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 blah. And it's just kind of like, honey, relax. Like, not everybody's a douche. And she's just never nice. So every look on her face is just snarly and, she just always looks like she's ready to fight. She's just annoying. And, every single one of these flashbacks was the same. It was like her, just trying to put John in his place and basically tell him that she didn't need his help and blah, 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 blah. And then when she ultimately did need his help, he was there to help her. And then she helped him. And it was a lot of eye rolling from my side because it's just yes, we, fine. They found a connection and they were together. I don't see it because she's just always negative. She's just a Debbie Downer all the time. So that part of their relationship, it just gets to be a little bit frustrating. So now in present day, when John returns back to the lair to save Charlotte, he basically makes it clear, I'm here because I want to help Charlotte. And then somehow they're able to, it's not so much somehow, but he just doesn't want to abandon the lair. He doesn't want to abandon the Tomorrow People. That is his family. And he says that to Kara. She's like, I'm ordering you to leave and I'm ordering you to go to the safe house. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving. She's just like, why are you, not listening to my authority and everything? And he's like, don't you get it? We built this place together. Whether we are together or not, I want to be here for you. And when this all comes to a head, I want to be here. And it's not about I don't respect you. It's just the fact that this is my family. You're my family, good or bad. This is it. And it's she's just, she just grates on my nerves sometimes. But it was a good scene because he was just I'm in it because I'm, this is my family and this is all I want to be around. And then of course they have a kiss and it's okay, so these two are gonna maybe get back together. Sure, fine, whatever. Let it play out. I'm not a fan of it, but whatever. So what I am a fan of is the stuff that happened at the very beginning of the episode. So, of course, which is rightfully so, Astrid is, afraid to leave the house. She's having a little bit of agoraphobia, and she is, worried that she's going to be attacked again because, this is the second time that a kill squad has come after her, and anybody would be nervous. So she basically tells Steven to kick rocks and go to school without her because she's sick. And he's like, "You don't look sick." She's like, "Well, are you a doctor?" "No, it might be contagious." And she basically just kicks him out of the house. And it was a really cute scene because she's just like, "Look, I'm not ready to get back to normal. You and your Tomorrow People friends and your lifestyle is a little bit too much for me." And he's like, "Oh, is that what this is all about?" And it's like, "Well, duh, you idiot." She was shot at like twice. So anyways, she tells him to go away. Then, of course, because John is staying at Steven's house, he's in there, shirt off, working out, doing some nice crunches upside down. And then he hears like this, beeping noise. So he goes over to the computer, and Astrid is trying to message with Steven, basically like Skype, right? And what was kind of weird, the only thing I'm going to complain about was that, like, Steven would have been in school. So why would she think that he would have answered the laptop? But that's fine. I'm willing to get over it. Maybe she thought he took the laptop to school. Fine, fair enough. Okay, that's what we'll go with. So, of course, John answers the message and they start talking, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing there? I was expecting to see Steven and not you with your shirt off." And he's like, got this little smirk on his face. So, anyways, they end up having a little conversation, and she's just like, "Yeah, I'm not really, feeling like I can just get back to normal life." And he's like, "I hear you." And he's like, "Well, let me come to you." And so then he teleports to her place. And then they have this really great conversation where she's just like, "Listen, I'm terrified right now, and I'm scared to be around Steven because this reality is too much for me." And I mean, I get that, back in the day, she was prying Steven for information, but I don't think she thought that this was going to be what the reality was going to be. You know what I mean? So fair enough, she's nervous, she's afraid to go back to her normal life, which anybody would be. And then John, like the awesome person that he is like, "Well, let me help you." He's like, "I'll, basically spend the day with you and help you get over this." So takes her by the hand, and then they end up on the subway train, which seems to be the place where all things go down. So they're on the subway train, which is empty again. All these subway trains always seem to be empty whenever these guys are on it. So they end up on the subway train, and he's just, having a conversation with her, and he's trying to explain to her, like, fear is okay, fear is normal, we all have it. And he opens up the back door of the subway, and he's like, basically like, "Do you trust me?" And I'm glad that she didn't say, "I trust you," because I would have been like, "Oh my God, this is Titanic all over again." And I just, no. So he reached out his hand again, and she like kind of smiled at him, and she took his hand, and then he's like, "I'll be here, like I'll be with you the whole time." And he's like, "I'm not going anywhere." And they have this like nice little look with one another, and she kind of smiles, and then they count to three, and he goes one, and boom, he teleports out, and then they land back in her house. And I mean, listen, I've been a fan of anybody other than Kara with John, okay? And I've also been a fan of, putting Astrid more into like the storyline, because I think her role in this story is important because she is human. And, everybody else is a Tomorrow person. Jedekai is human, but he's evil. And it's nice to have somebody in this world that isn't, doesn't have superpowers, and dealing with knowing somebody who's in this world and then also being a normal person. So, that her role on the show, I think is important. So the fact that she is Steven's best friend, and she's in love with him, that's just another side part. But personally, I would rather see her with John than with Steven, because I'm not interested in watching her chase after somebody who's not interested in her. And I think that the chemistry between John and Astrid is far greater than the chemistry between Kara and John, because she just has like a stink look on her face all day, every day. So for me, I would be shipping John and Astrid, Jastrid, Jostrid, whatever people want to call them. I'm that team for sure. So I really did enjoy all of those scenes that they had together. And, again, like, John is just a great character on the show because he just knows how to tap into that human side of people, even though he's part human and part Tomorrow person. And even again, the scene at the end when he finally gets to meet up back with Charlotte, and she's so excited that he's back in the lair, and he hugs her like a big brother would hug his younger sister, and it's sweet. And you can tell that moment has been earned because they've had some scenes before this where he was like a big brother to her. So it was another great moment where his leadership showed once again. So of course, we're back with things pretty much back to normal. Everybody's back in the lair. Some damage was done, but I'm sure everything will be fine. Julian is gone. Jenikai's, probably staring at his brother through the glass floor. And at the end, Steven comes in and he's talking to Tim, the guy up in the sky or in the machine up there. And he's like, "Where's John and Kara?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not supposed to tell you." And they're hooking up. So they're back together. Fine. And then on the table, there's all this stuff. And he's like, "What is this stuff?" And he's like, "Oh, this is some stuff that your father was working on before he left." And then this thing starts to glow, and Tim's like, "Oh, it seems like it likes you." And it's like, I don't know what that means, but that's basically how the episode ends. So obviously he's found some new piece of technology, which will ultimately probably help them locate him. And, that's good. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of the things that I don't understand why they're not addressing on this show. One, I get that, they spend some time on Astrid and she's nervous to go back to her normal life. But we never got an explanation as to, one, where did she go? Two, where's her father in all this? Like, he was there in the shop when it got riddled with bullets. So what story have they told the father? Why is the father just okay to leave his daughter alone? Like, we didn't get any follow-up from that. So I'm a little disappointed that we still don't know. Because, even John and Astrid, or Steven and Astrid, could have dropped just a single line saying, my dad is still really worried because, he doesn't, believe what's going on, or your mom talked to my dad, and, nothing. So we didn't get any follow-up with that, so we don't know what was told to them. And then we also have the mom, who drops this huge bomb on us 2 episodes ago. We didn't get any follow-up by the end of last week's episode, and then she's not even in this episode. So I feel like they're just dropping the ball on some key, important information that needs to be told to the audience. Like, where was his mom in this episode? Why isn't Steven having this, I demand to know answers conversation from his mom? Why aren't we seeing that? Astrid made it sound like she was gone for a week. So what's happened, in that time? How come conversations were not had? Or at least, Steven saying, well, when I talked to my mom, she explained all this stuff to me. Just drop a line with this kind of stuff, because it just seems like huge plot holes. It's too big of a revelation to then not talk about. So those kinds of things kind of bother me. The only other thing that sometimes drives me nuts is when, so when everything was going down in the grocery store and, Julian and his kill squad, or whatever, the people that he was with, came in, why couldn't Kara just be like, John, I need your help, or blah, 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 I need your help? Why aren't they always being able to talk to other people whenever they need to? Because it seems like they do, or sometimes only when one person's talking to one person, other people can't cross hear the conversations. I don't know. So sometimes I always find that very odd, and they don't really explain it. But that's just me nitpicking at the show. So all in all, I did enjoy this episode, but I do think that there are some things that they need to address, seriously. And, John and Kara getting back together is fine as long as it ends at some point and he then moves on to Astrid. Because that would make me happy. All right, guys, let me know what you thought of this episode. Am I crazy for shipping John and Astrid? Do you guys like Kara and John? Steven even got kicked to the side in this episode, and Tim was the one who revealed that piece of information. That was kind of funny. And then even Steven, was made a reference, "Oh, John, huh?" And Kara, and then Astrid was like, "Yeah, no, not like that." And it was sort of like, don't say no yet. But we'll see what happens. All right, guys, now that's it. I'll see you next week.